this flint knapping tool. Consists of a heavy gauge copper wire and a rounded, weighted copper impact flaker, a copper whopper, if you will. Let's get started. This is a 1-inch copper cap. I think it was $3 at Ace Hardware. And the first thing that I'm going to do is anneal it, because copper work hardens and heat softens, so that when I'm rounding this over with a hammer, I don't work harden the metal and end up causing cracks. At the end of the rounding over part, I will anneal it again so that when I make my tool, that tool has softened copper and may better grab the stone that's being knapped with it. So we will continue the annealing process. Maybe. Here we go. See those colors moving? That's when you know it's hot enough. So I'm just going to let that cool and come back and round it over. All right, so I've got my softened 1-inch copper cap, and this is my round anvil. These kind of anvils have a handle for tightening that looks like that, and it's a good steel round ball. You can also pinch a ball peen hammer in your vise with the ball up and use that as a round anvil. This happens to fit perfectly. So with my softened copper, I'm just going to start tapping right around this edge. Starting to round over a little bit here on the top. What I want to do is flatten this sharp 90 here into a round. So I'm going to put that at a steep angle and hit it right on that edge. And there you go. You can see it's a pretty even round over. Also looks kind of cool with the hammer marks on it. See a little bit right here I want to do more thoroughly. And there we go. That one's done. All right. So the next step is to make a handle that this cap fits on. This is a piece of 1-inch pine dowel that I got at the hardware store. And as you can see, it doesn't quite fit on there. So it needs to be tapered a little bit so that the cap will fit on there. This does not need to be sanded very much. Really just a half a millimeter all the way around would be fine. You want it to fit on there and fit tight. So there we go. The other side will have the wire for pressure flaking. So that needs to be tapered much more aggressively. This piece of sandpaper is pretty worn out. So you get the point. You want to hold it on there at a pretty steep angle and keep spinning it until you get it sharpened like a pencil. And you probably want to leave about a 3/8 piece there at the end. You don't want to go any sharper than that. And you want to do it in such a way that you try to keep that in the center of the mass of your tool. So we'll go with that. All right. For the weight, the weighted end of this tool, A lot of people melt lead into the cap, and then that gives them the weight that they need, and it also prevents the copper from denting on impact with the stone. What I like to use is rebar and JB Weld. Keeps me away from the toxicity of heating up lead, and it also just happens to be what I have laying around. So I cut a, what's this, 2-inch, almost 2-inch piece of 1/2-inch rebar. I've got a 5/8 tip on my drill that will make a hole bigger than this, not too much bigger, but enough for a bunch of JB Weld to surround the rebar and fill the hole. And I'm going to do what I can to make that about the center, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay if the rebar sticks out a little bit. There'll be some space, and the more space the better, maybe, because that means you get to put more JB Weld in there. And the other side, I need to make a hole for this piece of copper wire. This is ground wire that I bought from the local hardware store. It's for making a ground wire to your house. And I'll just kind of tap that a little bit straighter. Again, that doesn't have to be perfect. We'll straighten it in relation to the tool at the end. So that's something you want to be tight, and you only want to go about half the distance, maybe a little bit more. This piece is also 2 inches. So drill a hole about 1 inch, 1 1/8 or so. And this one you do want to keep pretty accurate, straight in relation to the mass of the handle. And you want that to be a snug hole. So my drill bit is almost exactly the same size as the wire. I don't want to go much bigger than that. A little coating of JB Weld on this will secure it in there, especially if you take an aggressive sandpaper and scuff up the part of the copper that goes into the handle. That'll give the adhesive something to grab a hold of. All right, like I said, I like to use JB Weld for this part because it's a really heavy epoxy. It's got metal in it, and it secures very strongly and is a heavyweight material itself. You just want to mix that very well. But I've got this whole cap to fill, most of it at least, and I've got this big hole. I'm filling probably 1/4 of that hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to smash some of this stuff into that hole. Try not to be too messy, but you'll have plenty of chance to sand things, and I'm going to cover this handle with something that looks nice at the end anyway. So put some on there, put some on the rebar itself just to make sure everything adheres well. And then start by cramming that down in the hole. And look, there's some squeezing out. That's good. That means I have enough in there. Now, I'm going to take a lot of this and put it in my cap. Now this part, you want to make sure that you get it filling this whole round part. because that's going to provide you with structural support when you're impacting the stone with this tool. You don't want your copper to dent because there's a hollow place in there. And you push it on there until it starts to squeeze out. Maybe you'll get some bubbles and some squeeze out there. That's letting you know that you've got a nice full cap. So I'm going to take my copper wire and I'm going to coat that for that first inch. Don't need much. And I'm going to gently tap that wire down into the hole. I don't want to tap so hard that I dent the bottom of this. What I'm going to do with this, make sure that's on there nice and straight. I'm going to wipe off the excess, and I'm going to set it like this. I set it on a little heater. This way, all of the JB Weld will pool in the bottom, and maybe even that piece of rebar will slide down into the copper cap a little bit. That'll give me more weight on the end of this tool for striking with. It's a dull point, but it's cleaned up enough to use. This is about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch. That is ideal. Any more than that, when you put pressure on it, flaking the stone, that piece of wire could tend to bend. There's some kind of nasty excess on there. I want that edge cleaned up pretty good because I'm going to put leather on this handle. Very thin buckskin. So as you can see, that width will barely start to come down onto this tapered point. So the way you do that, to measure that, is you just wrap it around there and you look at where they meet, and a little bit less than that. You want to have a little bit of a gap. Saddle leather, medium to thick grade hide, the leather glue, the buckskin. I buy all of these things from Centralia in Centralia, Washington. furandhide.com, or you can go to your local Tandy Leather. Tandy Leather has all of these products as well. Be careful to get right up against that copper. I just place that on there, and I work my way around, being careful to make sure that it fits tightly against the copper. I'm just going to kind of paste it on there however it fits, and then with my 2 thumbs, I'm going to squeeze it together and just kind of zip it closed. Just a few seconds of doing this, and you'll have that leather in a nice tight seam. Almost can't see it. So I go to that lowest point and I just trim my way around there. Start at the lowest point. These come off. And there, my friends, is the finished product. Flint Knapping tool, pressure flaker, impact flaker, copper wire, Copper Whopper. Thanks for watching.